Hey Jam, how do you feel about tanning and self-tanners?
Are you sure you want me to answer that on the internet?
No, it's okay. But have you ever seen someone do like a bad self-tan?
All of them. Yeah, every single one I've seen has all been bad.
And have you ever wondered what that like fake tan even is?
I've not wondered that, but now I am, and I'm like, what are people putting on their skin?
What are people putting on their skin? I think the answer might surprise you. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to satisfy our curiosity about what people are putting on their skin. We're going to look at the chemistry of self-tanners, and we're going to talk about how they were first discovered or developed. And we're going to answer lots of questions submitted by our listeners.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yay. Hey, I'm Melissa.
I'm Jam.
And I'm a chemist.
And I'm not.
And welcome to Chemistry for Your Life.
The podcast helps you understand the chemistry of your everyday life.
Okay, so this is a shout out to Jessie. Jessie is one of our followers on Instagram, and she's a part of our community on Patreon. And I believe she also works in the beauty industry. So she was the first person who asked me this question, which was, how do self-tanners work? And then I had a student, actually she's my like TA helper person.
Nice.
Who had recently done a self-tan, and she was like, I kind of went a little crazy. And now my hands are orange. And I was like, I didn't know that people did self-tans anymore.
Yeah.
But you said you know someone who does also.
Yeah, and I guess I've had a few relatives who have been pretty into that. And like, I just don't think about it very much. But when it does come up, I'm sort of like, I don't understand why that exists. And also, now that you've posed that question, I am like, could this be like really bad?
It could be. But I actually don't think it's bad as it could be.
Okay.
I think it could be very bad.
Okay.
But I don't think it as bad as it could be.
Okay.
And also my roommate sometimes does self-tan. And she says she just, or like the fake tan, you know, she says she just likes how she looks when she's tan, but she doesn't want all the negative side effects from actual tanning in the sun, because I have beat it into her that like the UV is really bad for you.
Right.
So that is a small win for me.
Got it. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess there is like we've talked about that on the podcast plenty, when it's like, okay, certainly there's if this is what you need so that you don't do the UV damaging thing, then this is probably, hopefully, not as bad.
It's not. It's not. Evidence says that it's probably not as bad. You're right.
Cool.
But it could trick you in some ways. But evidence says it's probably not as bad.
Okay.
So we'll first talk about, I want to talk about how they're discovered, and then I'm going to talk about what the chemistry of them actually is. So someone, her name is Eva Wittgenstein. Sorry, Dr. Eva, in advance for saying your name wrong. Was studying she was like using a type of sugar on patients who had some kind of metabolic disorder. So some disease or disorder related to the way they were digesting their food. And so she was giving them this sugar. And when the sugar would spill on their clothes, it was just clear. But when the sugar would spill on their bodies, it would stain them dark. And she was like, what's up with that? So she started to study this reaction. And this reaction quickly traveled into the cosmetics industry. And they found, this is a way that we can get this suntan look without the danger of natural tanning. And this happened as recently as the 60s.
Wow.
I think it was the 60s when this first came about. Okay, so how then does this sugar being spilled on our skin make this happen?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember this. A way long time ago, we talked about how other things turned a darker shade of brown. Meat, toast,
Maillard
coffee.
reaction?
A Maillard reaction. So we're basically just doing the same thing to our skin that we do to toast.
Okay.
Is we're just Maillard reactioning.
But not with heat.
Well, that's a good question. There is some heat from our body. And so if you think about a self-tan, a lot of times you put on the self-tan and it develops over the next several hours. That's because you do have some heat from your body, but not nearly as much as would be on a stove.
Right.
So the reaction still works, but it just doesn't work as effectively.
Right. And really, isn't it it's a polymer that's forming?
Yes. So I have a quick review about Maillard reactions because we haven't talked about them in a long time.
Or I was just thinking, I was realizing like, I don't know, there's a lot I don't remember about that, but it's like, oh, of course we've talked about so many polymers that aren't about like being in an oven or being in a toaster. So it's like not crazy that one is happening without there being like 400 degrees of heat. Or whatever.
It can happen at room temperature.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because we did that one really early, and then so much of our polymer stuff has been like of my like adding to my knowledge about that has been since then. It's kind of funny going back to like that topic from ages ago. Yeah.
And being like, oh yeah, it does have to have heat.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I keep adjusting my mic. So sorry. It's just not quite exactly where I want it to be. Okay. So a quick review about Maillard reactions, but do you remember that? So Maillard reactions are browning reactions, and they're typically thought to be responsible for turning toast brown, for roasting coffee, turning roast coffee brown, cooked meat brown. And they're typically characterized by the reaction of two things. Do you remember what they are? It's okay if you don't.
Characterized by the reaction of two things. No, I do not.
Okay, that's okay. I'll remind you. So the two things, one is an amino acid or the amine group from an amino acid.
Okay.
And remember, amino acids are, they're sort of like the building blocks of protein. They're the repeating unit that happens in the polymer of protein, basically. And they are called amino acids because they have amine groups and then a carboxylic acid group. And so you combine amine and carboxylic acid and you get amino acid.
Got it. Okay.
So the amine group on those amino acids reacts with a sugar for a typical Maillard reaction. Okay. And sugars in biochemistry are not just, table sugar, but they are from carbohydrates. And this is kind of fun. So I was like, what defines a carbohydrate? That's a word that we hear a lot. But a carbohydrate in biochemistry is a carbon that is hydrated. So it's literally any molecule that has the basic molecular formula of one carbon and then an H2O molecule if there's at least 3 of those units.
Wow.
But it's not always just like the carbon and the H2O. Like it's not always arranged just like carbon plus water, but the overall molecular structure is C3, for example, C3H6O3, so it's like all of those times 3 carbons, 6 hydrogens because it's H2, and then 3 oxygens, whatever the repeating unit of them is 1 carbon for every 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, which basically is like 1 carbon for every H2O.
Okay.
So 1 carbon for every hydration carbohydrate.
There have to be at least 3. Like, so if you just have 1 carbon, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, not considered carbohydrate.
Nope.
Okay.
And 1 carbon, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. That's actually formaldehyde, I think is like, is that the only way that could be? Yeah. So, tasty. So not a sugar, but so the simplest one is 3 carbons. Anything below that is not considered a carbohydrate. So, and a lot of times it's like the way that, for example, it's arranged, the carbohydrates can be arranged a lot of times is carbon can be double bonded to one of the oxygens and then have 2 hydrogens somewhere else. Carbon can be bonded to an alcohol, which is that OH group. So carbon bonded to an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen. So there are lots of different ways it can be arranged, but the carbohydrate name just came from that basic molecular formula of realizing like, oh, for every 1 carbon, we have 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. That's H2O. carbon hydration, carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So.
Dang, interesting.
I know. I didn't know that. That's a fun new fact I learned.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I figured carbohydrate had something to do with carbon, but I never thought about what exactly it was.
Right. Yeah, I've never have either. It's so strange. There's so much that like there's just terms we get used to in like food, which
like
is such
trans fat.
Yeah, which is like an everyday thing, which is like, maybe I learned a little bit of what this means just as far as it means for food. Like which foods are carby foods, That's kind of it. Like it's like really all that I've thought about. So yeah, weird.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Sugars in biochemistry are a type of carbohydrate. They're just like really small, simple carbohydrates. So in a Maillard reaction, you have those sugars, a simple sugar react with an amine group from this amino acid. And I don't know if you remember this about Maillard reactions, but the first few steps, they're pretty well known. They're complicated, so I won't talk about them, but maybe like the first 4 or 5 steps, it's like we know they do this, but then they are sort of classified as a cascade of reactions after that there's just a lot of reactions that can happen. It's really complicated, and it'll give you a lot of different molecules. Like one paper that I read estimated that just one sugar and one amino acid combination could make 300 different molecules.
Wow.
Because it could just combine in a lot of different ways. So that's something I thought was interesting. But a lot of them are often highly conjugated. And if you remember, the word conjugated means alternating double bonds. And those alternating double bonds, if there's a lot of them or highly conjugated is what that means, they tend to have the perfect gap in their energy so that they can absorb energy in the visible region.
Okay, yeah.
So they are usually highly colored.
Right.
So yellows and browns, for example, are colorful. So, and a lot of them are, like you said, polymers as well. So, and polymers will be like long chains of molecules, so they can have that highly conjugated nature as well. So, let me make sure. Sorry, I lost my. So in this case, we have one of the simplest sugars. In the case of the self-tanner, it's one of the simplest sugars. It's called dihydroxyacetone. So it just actually has 3 carbons, double bonded to oxygen in the middle, and some alcohol groups on either side. Very, very simple. Just the smallest sugar you can possibly get, smallest carbohydrate you can possibly get.
Okay.
And it reacts with the amino acids that are naturally in our skin. So those are typically some common ones in our skin are an amino acid called arginine, lysine, and histidine.
Okay.
So for all you biochemists out there who care, for everyone else, it doesn't matter. Just the amino acids that are commonly in our skin. Okay, so that's a little bit about the background of a Maillard reaction and what Maillard reaction they think is happening in self-tanners.
Okay.
But there's been a little bit of a debate. And specifically, this is something that Jesse asked about. There's been a little bit of a debate in the chemistry community about if this is a true Maillard reaction.
Okay.
Because I think maybe partially because there's not heat. And so there's some questions about that. But also, the Maillard reaction is so complex. And up until 2023, there was not a clear path that they could say, oh, this is exactly how this reaction happens. We call that a reaction mechanism in organic chemistry.
Okay.
So up until 2023, there was not good evidence for the reaction mechanism proceeding in the same way with those same first steps as the Maillard reaction.
Okay.
So there was even some people who had put out a paper with somewhat good evidence based on what I read that maybe it skipped those first few steps and like jumped ahead. So it might have still got the same end product as Maillard, but not been exactly the same.
I see. Yeah.
So even reading that, I kind of was like, well, whether or not it's Maillard or Maillard-like doesn't really matter because we know that it's getting the same end products that a Maillard type like reaction would get.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like, and a lot of how we think reactions happen is theorizing about the way the electrons move anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some organic chemists would argue with me about that, but I kind of think like, oh, this is our best guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this seems sort of just like semantics. Who cares? But then I found a January of 2023 paper.
Oh.
That this was so interesting, but they mixed that sugar, that simple sugar, the dihydroxyacetone, sometimes called DHA, with those 3 amino acids that are most often found on our skin, or the common ones, the arginine, lysine, and histidine. And they had already published a paper where they basically like found the optimal conditions for these to react with the DHA and the different amino acids to react. And so then once they did that, they found the optimal conditions. Then they took the highly colored molecules that were made and they ran them through. There's an instrument called an HPLC. It's high performance liquid chromatography, I believe. But basically its job is to like, based on certain characteristics of the molecule, they'll move slower or faster through this like tube is the best way I can describe it.
Okay.
And so usually it's like about the molecule's polarity, which is something we've talked about before, but basically how willing the molecule is to grab onto the medium that it's like moving through.
Okay.
You know? So it'll do that to separate it out. And then when the like one molecule, like it'll be kind of like in a group. So you can imagine it kind of spreading out and you'll have like a whole band of A, and all this that's coming out now is this first type of molecule. And then the second one that holds on a little bit better takes a little bit longer to come out, but it'll be all of the second kind that'll come out. And then you can analyze that. So it kind of comes off in these, we call them bands or fractions.
Okay.
So it separates out all these different things. And so in this case, they took these highly colored molecules that resulted from the mixture of the amino acid and the sugar, and they ran it through this instrument and they separated it all out. And they found that most of the color was responsible for these like dark browns and yellows that were coming after this reaction. It was primarily from one molecule. And then they retroactively suggested a reaction pathway that seems likely and that is parallel to a Maillard reaction.
Okay.
And then they did something else that I thought our listeners might not know about, which is you can plug a lot of information about molecules into computers and have computers theorize about like the energy levels, or is this reaction pathway likely based on, you know, if we put all this information in, what would the energy be? And is this energy like higher or lower than what we started with? We're typically trying to get lower energy. Everything in chemistry is trying to move to be more stable. So they plugged all this information in to these like people who they have whole PhDs in what we call computational chemistry, where they can like do theory and calculate how theoretically how this react instead of actually reacting it. So they theoretically plugged this reaction pathway in, and their results indicated that this would be energetically favorable and that there is a high likelihood that this reaction pathway would be a good pathway to get from point A to point B.
Okay.
So basically, this paper, just as recently as 2023, seemed to prove that this is not just a Maillard-like reaction. This is a real Maillard reaction.
Interesting.
So that's kind of like a little tiny chemistry fight, but I kind of thought it was fun.
Yeah. It's funny too, because it's weird because there's obviously like what's happening here. But then there's sort of an argument like, what do you call it though? You know, it's like maybe people could agree about what's going on or like what are some good theories about it. But then if you're just having a disagreement about what do you call it, that doesn't seem that worthwhile to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But there's really good competing theories about what's even happening. That seems worth fighting about.
Yeah.
Is this happening or is this happening?
Yeah.
But sort of like, what do you call it? That seems like semantics.
Well, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, is this just argument about what do you call it? Because it ends up the same, but there's like one little thing that's different. That seems silly to me. But then I was like, no, they're actually arguing about if the mechanism, like if the way that the reaction actually happens is the same. And that could have implications potentially for other things.
Yep.
Hard for me to think about what they would be, and I think it's valuable for us to think about things like that.
Yeah.
One thing though I do like to talk about that probably students don't think about this very often, but a lot of what we think about in organic chemistry or like in reactions of molecules in general is theory. Is we're just theorizing about a lot of things. And so we're like that this is our best guess based on what we know right now. But I'm always saying that we're probably going to find out something new soon.
Right.
And I think very recently, I don't know for sure, but very recently there was like a thing that came out. I need to look in it that said something about like a bond being made of one electron. And I was like, I knew there was stuff we didn't know. I haven't looked at it yet. So for those of you who are like, oh yeah, that was just clickbait or whatever, I haven't read it. But yes, it's like, so there's a lot of things that we don't know. But the way that we learn about new things like that is by going in detail into how do we think that this happens most likely.
Yeah. Dang. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Did you say which one of the molecules or which thing that when they were testing all of them and running them through that like tube thingy, did you say what it was called? The one that did it? Or do you not remember?
No, it's a pretty complicated molecule. Yeah, okay. It wouldn't matter. But it was sort of like there was one for each of the 3 amino acids that it was like, oh, this amino acid A reacts with the sugar and it goes through the same pathway. It's just like slightly different in this way, but the pathway is the same. And there was that same major molecule, just with the slight variations based on what was already changed in the original amino acid. That did it for all 3. So they like in 3 separate vials, they were like arginine, lysine, and histidine reacting with this one simple sugar that we use in self-tanners. And they all 3 went dark, like became darker colored. And then each one ran through the instrument that separated them out and sort of like purifies individual things that are present in the molecule. And they were all 3. It was like, you can imagine the amine group, the way the amine group for each of the amino acids reacted with the sugar was the same. But what the amine group was attached to was different based on if it was arginine, lysine, or histidine.
Okay.
So it was almost like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Can you think of something where it's like the base is the same, but you can kind of change it out to get different things on it? Oh, like those glasses. You know those glasses that you can like, they're like called pear or something? Oh, yeah. And the base glasses are the same, but you can just change out like the frame on it?
Yes, my brother got some of those and he was telling me about it. Yes. Okay,
so it's kind of like that. It's like the reaction that happens is the same. You get glasses either way, but depending on which of the amino acids you started with, you kind of have a different like what's attached to it.
Got it.
So like the different frame for each of the different, glasses.
Okay.
Sort of like that. But the basic unit was the same in all of them. It was a complicated molecule. I don't think the name really matters. I just think it's interesting that it's the same type of reaction that we see in our, like we're just kind of toasting ourselves.
Yeah.
We're browning ourselves just like we brown meat.
Yeah.
So that was the thing I wanted to pull out. And that there was this like argument about, I like the drama.
Yeah.
I like
totally.
the tea.
Yes.
So it's like, we don't know for sure. And I found an article that came out, they both came out in January 2023. And one was saying like, oh, well, these people have suggested that, the reaction goes this way. And they have good evidence that it skips this beginning part. And like in the same month, the other one came out that was like, and now we have good evidence that it does the first part and it is a Maillard reaction. And I was like, oh, that's fun. I don't know if they were actually like reading it and mad at each other, but it's fun to imagine that like,
yes,
there was some tension,
totally. Yeah. 100%.
So I had fun reading it, but I was convinced by the second article. They convinced me. I think that this is a Maillard reaction. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is. Wow. Huh.
So let's see. Oh, I was going to give you some fun facts.
Okay.
About the science about the DHA or our self-tanners.
Okay.
Okay, so there is some evidence that this putting DHA on our skin increases the number of free radicals.
Okay.
Oh, and I didn't say the DHA reacts with your dead skin cells. It reacts with the amino acids in your dead skin cells.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask, because I was back to the like sort of like application side of when we're putting it on. Because it's amino acid, but I was like, is it getting down in there? Like that would not be so great, right? But like, yeah, just was curious about that. So it's just already dead ones, which we probably have like a pretty good buildup of all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So we do have a layer of dead skin cells like that are sort of above our living skin cells, kind of that we are like shedding off. And they don't just leave our body right away. So they have high protein in them. Our cells have proteins in them. And so those amino acids are the building blocks of a lot of protein that are in those skin cells. And so that dead layer is the one that the DHA reacts with. If you like, imagine you put like some lotion on your arm, and they tested this by the Dr. Eva, whose last name is hard to say, that starts with a W, Wittgenstein, something like that. She tested it by what they call skin tape stripping. So she put some DHA on her skin and then put some tape on it right there before the pigment had developed, and like pulls it off. So in that section, no pigment formed. So if you took off that top layer, it didn't get darker right there.
Got it.
Indicating that it's not really going down into the skin. It's on the top layer.
Got it. So, okay, got it.
So that's how it works. And then, so there's some evidence that the number of free radicals on our skin increases over the time period after you put that on. And I'm not super surprised by that, because I'm thinking if this reaction is happening, it's really complicated. Things could be moving around, and it's almost like, it's not, but it almost to me feels like maybe that layer of dead skin cells exists to do some protecting. And so if we're messing with that.
Right. Okay,
but the other thing that doesn't super surprise me, why this doesn't super surprise me, is for 24 hours after you apply this self-tanner, you're actually more sensitive to UV rays. And again, I'm wondering is that because when you put that self-tanner on, you're messing with these dead skin cells that maybe are doing something helpful?
Yes.
And so those two things together, I'm thinking if you have less protection and you're getting more UV rays, that could be causing other reactions that could increase the number of radicals on your skin. So that doesn't surprise me. But it seems like that is mostly in the first 24 hours. And then after that, you do get a little bit of sun protection from self-tanner, but it's only like UPF or SPF 3.
Oh, okay.
So it's not enough. So I think some people think, oh, I have a tan now, I can go out. You still need to put on sunscreen, even if you're using self-tanner, because SPF 3 doesn't really protect you at all.
Right.
It only protects you 3.
Right.
Instead of 30 or 70.
Right. And I'm older than 3, so I need more. That's like what I always thought. It's like, it's your age. Yeah, it's weird because I can't find exactly my age, but I just get the closest SPF I can find.
And then you're like, why are you using 70 or only 30?
Yeah. That's so weird. Is that all they have at the store or what?
Okay, yeah. So let's see. Here are fun facts. I think I shared that it increases the number of radicals, and initially it decreases your protection from the sun, but then after that it builds a little back up. So I think that this is interesting. It takes 2 to 4 hours for the browning effect to kick in, which is likely because, like we said, it takes energy, and there's less energy from your body than from there would be in a frying pan, for example.
Right.
So you're just slowly toasting your skin instead of toasting it fast.
Right. Right.
And I think also this basic sugar already exists in our body. So it's not super there's not a high risk to having that,
Mm-hmm.
on your skin. So it is relatively safe. And so if you want that tanned look, this is a way to get it that I'm more in favor of than you going out into the actual sun. So that's everything. That's the fun facts.
Okay.
So I feel like this wasn't a true lesson.
Right.
So I decided to do something else inspired by, there's another podcast I listen to that also has an expert and non-experts called Tooth and Claw. And sometimes at the end of episodes, they do categories, and sometimes they play a game called Are My Co-Hosts Listening?
Okay.
Or Were My Co-Hosts Listening?
Nice.
And it's basically a pop quiz.
Got it. Okay.
So I thought...
Isn't this kind of always what we're playing?
Yeah, kind of.
But specifically, I'm playing it.
Yeah.
Like I'm being tested.
Well, that's what he does. It's actually called We're Mike and Jeff Listening, and he's Wes, and he's the expert.
Got it. Okay. All right.
But I thought it'd be fun to do a pop quiz instead of you summarizing the lesson back for me.
Okay, I'm ready to fail this.
Mostly because there wasn't a huge lesson like there normally is. Okay. Pop quiz. Number 1. Oh, you know what? I kind of wanted to try to make this a game, though.
Okay.
But I couldn't think of, like, if you pass versus fail, what you would win. Can you think of anything? You won a treat previously, and you never told me what beverage you wanted.
Oh, yeah.
And I never brought it to you. So it's kind of like, that didn't work.
Yeah, that didn't work. But I could tell you right now what treat I want.
Okay, tell me.
And that could be the thing.
Yeah, tell me. Tell me the treat.
I would take a diet cherry limeade from Sonic.
Okay. Well, I already owe you one of those. So this is going to be if you can earn a second one.
Okay. What if I kept never cashing these in and eventually it happened, but you, like, just the way it worked, you had to just give me like 6 diet cherry limeades at once? It's like, here you go. Here's all you want. It's like, well, I can't drink this many at once. Thank you, but
after the last one, I almost just showed up with Dr. Pepper shakes from Whataburger. But I also know that you have some health goals that's not aligned with.
That's true. I can probably spare one, but yeah, I thank you for being considerate.
Yeah.
Also, I thought that they took it away. Is it back now?
It was a while ago.
Oh, that back then. Okay,
but I had it semi recently. It was like I had it as a fun treat, like probably within the last month or 2.
Okay. Well, I don't remember when it was, but Em and I went specifically to go get one. We were like, it was like the kids were already asleep. It was kind of late though. We'd already eaten dinner, but my mother-in-law was like, why don't you guys go out and just go get a dessert? And they were like, oh, well, that pepper shake, obviously. Went to Whataburger.
Oh, no.
That was the day they stopped having it. Truly, they were like, we're out and we aren't going to do more. So I can't remember when that was, though. So I just I got a little excited thinking it's back, but it probably happened after you got one.
It says Whataburger's Dr. Pepper Shake is available for a limited time in fall 2024.
So that is them bringing it back because it's been gone since whenever that day was.
Whataburger first introduced the Dr. Pepper Shake in 2019 and has brought it back for limited time since, including January 23, January 24, and apparently in the fall as well.
Wow, that's awesome that they're bringing it back. They just need to like listen, I guess, and just like kind of always have it because, So anyway, I would take, if that is truly back, I would take that instead.
Okay.
And I would just work it out to where I have the room in my goal for that day.
Okay.
Deal?
I will also read you this title.
Okay.
Guess who's back? Back again. And then it says Whataburger's Dr. Pepper Shake returns.
Oh my gosh.
So that was August 29th.
Okay. Wow. That's great.
So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, so that is your little, I just gave you a little treat by telling you that exists again, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're welcome.
That's a treat right there.
Mine was a treat too. It was like there was like a weird thing that happened. I don't know. And I was like, I just kind of really want a Dr. Pepper Shake. And Mason was like, just get it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Okay. So pop quiz.
Okay.
If you pass, there's only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 5 questions. So if you get 3 of these right, I will owe you a Diet Cherry Limeade and a Dr. Pepper Shake.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. So question number 1. What is the definition of a carbohydrate in biochemistry terms?
In biochemistry terms, it has to contain 3 carbons, 6 hydrogens, and 3 oxygens.
That's true.
Okay,
That's the smallest one.
Oh, okay. At least 3.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. That's true. The ratio is carbon.
Oh, yes. Okay.
1 carbon, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen.
Right.
But it can be in any increment above 3.
Okay. Yeah. The lowest end has to have that or more.
Yes.
But if it's less than that, that still is a thing that happens in the world, but it's not a carbohydrate.
Right.
Okay.
Great.
Count?
I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I'll give it to you. I'm here for partial credit. I'll give it to you. Okay. What functional groups are present on an amino acid?
OH group? No.
No.
I know you said that earlier.
I did. I said it. Remember the name amino acid.
Okay.
That's a hint.
Is amine a functional group?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a nitrogen with some hydrogens.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's another one?
There's another one.
Look at the other functional groups we talked about.
Amino and...
Carboxylic acid?
Nailed it.
Whoa!
Amazing.
Is that partial? Got one that got it wrong the first thing I said? How do you count that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just give you like 0.75. I mean, you got there in the end, so that's what I really care about.
Okay.
Okay. What 2 things react in a Maillard reaction?
Sugar.
Mm-hmm.
A sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And is it reacting with the amino acids or with the protein?
It's with the amino acids.
Okay.
It's specifically the amine on the amino
the
acid.
The amine on the amino acids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'll give you half credit for that.
Okay.
Because you got the sugar.
Okay.
Okay. What year did the journal article come out that indicated that this is actually going through the same process as a Maillard reaction?
2023.
2023. Good job. Okay. And what side effects may self-tanner have?
May increase the presence of free radicals because on one hand, it might be sort of like just sort of taking away some of the protection we have of UV because of our dead skin cells that are there. So maybe it's, I can't remember if you said that, if it's increasing it because we're more susceptible to UV, or is it doing it for some other reason?
We don't know for sure.
We don't know, but it is increasing that and decreasing our protection from the sun, but
only for the first
24 hours.
Yep.
Okay.
You got every question partially right.
Nice.
At least. Good job.
Every question.
I'd say that's a win.
I'll take that. I think I'd rather have that than like have gotten 3 very right and 2 very wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It feels a little better having gotten everything a little right.
I like playing this game because whenever it's like fun for me as the listener on that other podcast of like when they ask the questions, I like shout out the answer. I have this very clear memory of us moving into our house a year ago, the house we rent. And Mason was kind of going in and out. So I was just listening to something on my headphones and I started to like say the answers and he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, I'm just playing where Mike and Jeff listening. And so I thought I would adapt it. And maybe our listeners also had fun shouting out the answers. Let us know if you liked that.
You know what's crazy is that I feel like I probably would do a little bit of a better job if I was like if I was playing that game on a regular basis and I was listening as an audience member and not as like the person sitting here.
Yes.
But sometimes when I'm listening to a podcast, it's like I'm listening to it and it kind of goes into a different part of my brain. And sometimes there's like things that I remember with great detail from a podcast.
Yeah.
Like a quote I could say almost verbatim.
Yes.
But it's just weird because that's not how like conversations work quite the same way, you know?
Yeah, like I can remember where I was when I learned specific things from certain podcasts. And like I can see myself in that space and I can think of like exactly what they said.
Yeah.
But I don't really have that same thing with like friendships.
Right. Yeah.
And chatting.
Yeah. It's also hard because while I'm listening and taking stuff in, it's often like I really don't know yet which of these things is going to be the most important.
Yeah.
And really like play into the bigger picture because there's a lot of like things along the way.
Yeah.
So many times where I'm like, okay, how hard should I like latch onto that detail?
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes you do latch onto things that I'm like, let go.
Yeah.
That one's
it's
not
like,
really
that's
important.
Not quite. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can't know until I have the full picture what things really like the key players, you know?
Definitely. Well, that was all I had for you today.
Cool.
Is I just wanted to bring back Maillard reactions and play Was Jam Listening.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fun.
And I kind of was, you
You
know?
kind of were.
Yeah.
I would say you were 75% listening.
Yeah. And that's better than I might have, you know, some topics we talk about. I'm severely invested in. It's like coffee. We've been into those. It's like I'm hanging on every word.
Yeah.
Tanning, I'm like, I'm going to try so hard to care about this. And I am interested. There's a mystery here that I want to know about. And I do kind of want to know, are my relatives making bad choices?
Yeah, that's really why you wanted to know.
Yeah.
So that you could. So do you want to tell people why you hate tanning? Should we give you this opportunity? Should we save this for the bonus episode? Oh, because I do have several questions that our listeners asked that I feel like we're kind of running up on time. So I figured we could move those questions over to the bonus episode, and maybe we could say, why does Jam hate tanning?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say I quite hate it, but I will leave the it is, but you could still call it like a hot take.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hot take.
Hate just seems like I really like. I think there's things I do hate, and I've looked way into them. You know, I've like studied them a lot, not even just like a science of it, but more like I've spent time developing my hatred for something.
Yes, you're like, I've looked into this, and here's exactly my argument.
Yeah, and this is not one of those.
Okay.
So
all right, that's good to know.
Yeah,
like sports.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Or you could say like personal experience. Like So say if I had had a really bad experience with tanning, then you could. I think I'd have a good like leverage for hate or something. So anyway, we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Before we go, should we shout out these cool shirts that we're wearing?
Oh, we should. We should have done at the beginning too. But yes, I am jealous because I do not yet have a ghost shirt.
A ghost holding an Erlenmeyer flask.
But we've brought that back for October. So get in there and order one quickly.
I wore it to teach my class on last Friday, and many of my students were like, look at how cute. Like so many people pointed it out. My students pointed out. My roommate, when I came in, she said, look at your little ghosty right there. People like it.
Yes.
People want the flask.
That's awesome.
The little ghosty flask.
And then once again, if you had missed it, we have these collegiate chemistry sweatshirts, and there's several colors of them, and we've been enjoying wearing them. And I've gotten some comments on them, and I've even just shown some people the design, been like, hey, check out what we came out with.
Me too.
And they've been like, dude, that's awesome. So
yeah, people really like it.
If you want one of these, you know, chemforyourlife.com/store, check them out. That one especially has a shorter lifespan. So the ghost holding Erlenmeyer flask for the month of October, get in there and grab that as soon as you can because it will go away.
Yep. And you want time to wear it for Halloween.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. And
spooky season.
And I do have one on the way. I couldn't resist. So
is it a sweatshirt or a t-shirt?
Long sleeve tee.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, be sure to tune in. I want to say thanks to Jessie for asking these questions, and be sure to tune into our bonus episode next week where we'll answer more of Jessie's questions where she shares some of her formulation experience. She also asks questions about like, why does tanning turn different colors on different skin? Why is the color orange sometimes? That kind of thing. So.
Okay.
And Miriam asked, what's that weird smell from self-tanner too?
Huh.
So we'll talk about those questions as we move into the bonus episode.
Okay.
So thanks,
good.
Jessie, for submitting those questions.
Yes, thank you. And if you have a question, thought, idea, follow up to anything we've talked about today or any other episode you listen to, please reach out to us on our website at chemforyourlife.com. That's foryourlife.com to share your thoughts, ideas, and questions. If you'd like to help us keep our show going and contribute to cover the cost of making it, you can join our super cool community of patrons on patreon.com/chemforyourlife. You get cool perks, ways of us saying thank you for supporting the show and keeping it free.
Do they get a coupon, a discount code
for
their merch?
They get a discount code for the merch. It's a nice, crisp 30% off.
Nice, 30%. That's good.
I know, it's solid, dude. I was like, okay, I guess we'll take that, you know? So, and you get an ad-free feed of the show. You get, if you're at the top tier, you get a monthly virtual coffee hour hang time with us. And, you know, lots of other stuff. Just our way of saying thank you. So if you'd like to support the show and get some perks in the process, join our super cool community of patrons on patreon.com/chemforyourlife. But if you're not able to do that, you can still help us by subscribing on our favorite podcast app, rating, write a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, subscribing on YouTube, commenting, liking some stuff over there. Those things help us share chemistry with more people, help more people find the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you just do all that from memory? That was amazing.
Yeah, I have been for a while.
Good job.
I've just been like memorying, and I just tweak it a little every time, I think. But,
yeah, I like that.
But I think most of it has stayed the same. Hopefully I haven't been forgetting something for like the last dozen episodes.
Well, good job. I still read because I don't want to miss a single person's name.
Oh yeah, there's no way I could do that though. That's fair. You have and it changes.
It does change, yeah. So this episode was made possible by our amazing community, our financial supporters over there on Patreon. It means so much to us. We're so thankful, like Jim said, for all the ways that you support us. We want to show you our thanks. And so part of a way that we do that is by spending time thanking you every week on our show, or every other week when we put a new episode out. So thank you so much to Autoclave, Chelsea M, Dorian V, Scott B, Jesse R, Sierra L, John T, Avishai B, Bree M. I'm just smiling because there's so many people. It's really fun. Brian K, Carol R, Chris and Claire S, Chelsea B, Derek L, Elizabeth P, Emerson W, Hunter R, Jacob T, Christina G, Katrina H, Latila S, Lynn S, Melissa P, Nicole C, Rachel R, Sarah M, Stephen B, Suzanne P, Timothy P, Venus R, Erica B, Cullen R, and Jeanette N. Thank you so much. We appreciate every single one of you. It's so fun that this list is getting so long. And also, we want to give an extra special thanks to Bree, who sometimes makes illustrations to go with episodes of Chemistry for Your Life. And I think that's, also our show notes.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And if you'd like to learn more about today's chemistry lesson, you can check out the references for this episode in our show notes on the audio version or in the description of the video on YouTube.
Yeah.
And yeah, chemistry.
I was going to say, yay tanning. Just kidding, though.
Yeah, maybe.
Wear sunscreen.
Yeah.